Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Oh, wow. Well, hello, Cookielicious. Welcome. How are you today? Doing all right? Excited that it's almost the weekend? I know I am. If so, do you have any weekend plans? Anything you're excited about? Could even be just like, hey, got paid, gonna go treat yourself to something. I think those are things that are important too. Oh, you have summer break right? That's awesome. Very nice. Hello, Chichi Kiki. Oh, till September? Nice. Well, I hope you have fun with that. How you doing today, Chichi Kiki? Anyway, yeah, this is actually the last stream. So we are actually on chapter 24. I picked up that you said good. All good. So we will actually be finishing it tonight and then starting our new book, which if you saw the little video and teaser I posted, is going to be The Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish. And I am doing pretty good. Got some stuff done today. I was kind of excited to make my first kind of little intro video, right? I love the fish book. I've actually read it a couple times, but it's one of my favorites, as you could probably tell from all the stickies and the little post-its. But I absolutely love it. It's such a fun read, so I'm excited to read it with all of you. But yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm excited for the weekend. Not that I really have anything big planned. Gonna just do normal stuff like groceries, shopping, clean the bathrooms, normal weekend things, and then just get back to it. You got to chapter 21 in the fish book? All right. Well, if you want to join, oh, now you'll wait for me. Oh, thank you. No, we'll get there pretty quickly. We go through books, it seems, very quickly, which I am not upset about. Speaking of books, just in regards to copyright stuff, you've read 3 volumes of Fish Book. Well, I'm excited that you haven't read the last one, so it'll be a bit of a surprise. It's going to be a little bit of time before then, but it's still such a good series, so it's worth it in between. I'm glad you're really liking it, Chichi Kiki. And I'm excited that you're going to wait for us to read it together for volume 4. That makes me really happy. Copyright. That's right. I do not own this book, anything related to it. I'm not making money. I am doing this just because I can, because I enjoy it, because I like sharing these books with all of you. So please don't come after me about copyright. I'm just doing it because I can. This is a very chill stream, if you couldn't already tell. I enjoy chatting with the chat, and I definitely have some comments that I like to share. So if that's not really your thing, well, maybe see if it might be. And yes, I am definitely picking up some new Danmei from Seven Seas. I am excited about, which one is it that's coming this month? Or that. I'm excited for the salted fish one. I know it's going to be a while before it gets released. And the war hero one, the disabled war hero. No, I have to stagger it. Which one's coming? Is it We Sleep in a Coffin? Husband and I Sleep in a Coffin. That's coming in August. I already have that one ordered. I have it all sectioned out. I'm going to get the special edition of Copper Coin. Next one of Dinghai Fushin Records. It's not Danmei, but I'm keeping up with the lout of Count's family. Yeah, no. Thrice Married to Salted Fish. I think I've read the Thrice Married to a Salted Fish. I think I've actually read that, like the rough translated version, and I really enjoyed it. But it, same thing with After the Disabled God of War Became My Concubine. That one I liked a lot. But yeah, no, I have them like sectioned out by date, so I can afford to buy them all. But I am excited to do that. And I will have plenty of things to continue reading for a while. So I am also excited about that. But yeah. I think I covered all of the intro things, except for like kind of what happened before. Yeah, can't afford Danmei. I don't blame you. It adds up really quickly, especially with them releasing so many special editions one after the other, where it's that little bit extra adds up quickly as well. But hey, that's what this is slightly for. It may not be right away, but I'll get to it eventually. I mean, a lot of stuff will come out in the meantime, but I plan to keep doing this for a while, so I mean, we'll get to it. Hopefully. Maybe after Thousand Autumns and everything, maybe I'll read the Exorcism one, because that one seems pretty cool. I started a bit of that one. And it's coming out very quickly. Like, they already have the second one out, and they're about to release the third. So I'm kind of curious how many's in that series. I haven't researched. I've been a bad Danmei girly, in that I haven't been researching it a ton. I did look at some of the release dates on things, but I've dropped the ball. 8? Oh boy. Gonna be another, like, I mean, I enjoy it when they're a longer series, but that also means there's gonna be a lot of pining and or adventuring and or intrigue, which I don't mind. But also, ouch on the wallet. Yeah, definitely ouch on the wallet. I hope some of these series are kind of a little more to the point. Let's put it that way. just in pity of my wallet. But we'll see. Okay. Summary. Last time we kind of got a big surprise about our boy and Hengwen. They finally kissed and discussed feelings and all that, and Song Yao, Yuanju. I wait for most to be done before buying. That's also a way to do it, but then I feel, I know you're paying the same amount. Mostly, like, you might get some discounts just because it's not exactly being released right then. But like, I feel like it's girl math. I'm like, oh, but that's so much money. And I'm like, you paid for it anyway. It just is all at once. That's my girl math brain. Doesn't feel as much when I'm buying one by one. You don't like Cliffic. I totally get it. This was before all the controversy and before J.K. Rowling went crazy. But I used to go to the releases, like the pre-release things. And I think it was for the 5th book, I told my brother, yeah, this is the last one, because my brain was thinking, this is the last one for now. And so, like, he was like, cool, and read the whole series, and he was like, you lied to me. And I was like, what do you mean? We just went to the release. He was like, that's not the end of the series. So he was a bit grumpy at me, and then he decided to try to ruin the he kept giving half hints for the final book, because he went and picked it up for me when I was at camp, being a camp counselor, and then he was like, I already read it. And I was like, don't you dare. I haven't read a book that fast in a very long time. I think I read that book in 4 hours because I was raging. I was like, you're not going to spoil it for me. And then cried. No, but I totally get where you're coming from, Chi Kiki. Like, no worries. Yeah. All right. So apparently there was some past history with Tian Shu and our boy. Oh, yep. Bye, Chi Kiki, and thank you. I hope to see you on Tuesday for the first one of our Don My Fish Boy. Oh, I cannot wait. This one has definitely kept me guessing at certain points. Initially it was like, who is the main what is the main pairing here? And then kind of picked up on it, and then kind of questioned like 3/4 through. I was like, are they actually here? Because like our other book by this author, The Imperial Uncle, kind of was like, which one you gonna pick, buddy? So I was like, is this author gonna do that again? But no, it's definitely Hengwen. But now we see there was some past history, and it's like, I'm still pretty positive it's gonna be Hengwen, because they just smooched it up. But I think it's really intriguing that Song Yao Yuanju actually had a past life with Tian Shu and ended up accidentally getting the like soulbound, not soulmate, but like the golden bond, accidentally getting it tied around him instead. And it's not a slip knot, it's a dead knot. And here, we'll start reading from here. It all made sense now. All the strange occurrences during this descent into the mortal world suddenly had an explanation. In all probability, Mingwei Qingjun was the one who had told Shangling about the immortal herb. Yep, no, I agree. I've liked it a lot. But I will hopefully see you on Tuesday. Same time as usual, 8 CST. But yeah. That was how Shan Xingling, a mere mortal, knew to steal it to save Mu Ruoyan's life. So, I looked at the lotus pond adorned with lotus leaves as green as jade. Hengwen said, you really do owe Tianshu a lot. Du Wenming, Tianshu Qingjun. Oh yeah, Du Wenming was the name before. Looking back on it now, I still felt that I had not treated Du Wenming the best. I would have done the same for someone else, but this act had indeed severed his bond and reconnected to mine. And by the end of it all, it had become a dead knot. Du Wenming had lived simply and was sweet-tempered. His appearance differed from Tianshu Qingjun too. No matter how I looked at it, I could not have imagined him to be the cold Tianshu. I had inflicted Mu Ruoyan with all sorts of abhorrent deeds. To protect me, Tianshu had been willing to descend to the mortal world to undergo tribulations, and yet I treated him in such a way. What was he thinking now? Just how was I supposed to repay him for all I owed him? Hengwen did not say anything more and sat side by side with me at the lotus pond. I looked again at my hand. I wonder if the thread will be gone if I hack off this finger now. You wish, Hengwen laughed. I'd like you to hack it off too. If it worked, the Jade Emperor would have done so long ago. Without your little finger, it can still secure itself elsewhere, unless... unless I was completely obliterated, and there was nowhere for it to bind itself to. I let out 2 quiet, wry laughs. Hengwen and I said nothing more as we remained sitting. After a while, I said, "The Jade Emperor ordered me to go over to Mingwei Qingjun, so I'd better get going." I stood. "All right," Hengwen said. "I heard Xuan Li has also been brought over to the Heavenly Court. I'll go check in on him." He rose to his feet, and I looked at him, but I did not know what to say. "Then this is farewell, I guess," Hengwen said. "Farewell," I said. I watched as Hengwen turned around and left. His back gradually receded into the distance, and for a fleeting moment it was like I had just ascended to the Heavenly Court for the first time. During that first encounter, I had also watched his back from afar as he gradually walked further and further away from me. I expelled a sigh of chilly air and entered Mingwei Qingjun's residence through the back door. All right, so that was before. And so now, hang on, pardon this. Now we're about to enter new territory. Okay. Chapter 24. I had just stepped through the back door when the young immortal attendant said to me, "You're finally here, Songyao Yuanju. Qingjun has already been waiting for you for half a day." He led me through several roof ridges and doors to a large pond enveloped in mist. Mingwei Qingjun sat cross-legged by the pond, seemingly in repose with his eyes closed. Ooh, we got some rhymes. Mist rose from the seeming water in the pond. Could there possibly be hot springs in the Heavenly Court too? Old man Mingwei sure knew how to enjoy life, having a hot spring at home to soak in every now and then. After the young immortal attendant led me to the side of the pond, he bowed and withdrew. I approached Mingwei Qingjun. With eyes still tightly shut, Mingwei Qingjun suddenly heaved a long sigh and recited, "Alas, every bite and every drink are all foreordained. Cause begets effect, such is the way of the universe." He sighed so ominously that my hair stood on end. There was going to be a doctrine dialogue these days. Don't tell me Mingwei Qingjun had already gone over to the Western Paradise for tea, too. That's right, because they all come back like quoting scriptures. I lifted the corner of my robe and sat down. "Qingjun, you can drop all those subtle Buddhist allegories from the Western Paradise. The Jade Emperor ordered me to come and hear the whole story from you, so please, get to the point." Mingwei Qingjun opened his eyes to look at me, then let loose another long sigh. This hot spring looks good," I remarked. "What hot spring?" Mingwei Qingjun said. "That's the fate-gazing pool. It allows you to see future events." Caught in mid-reach to stir the water, I immediately retracted my hand in embarrassment. "Cool hot spring, brah. That's an ancient artifact that has the power to rend worlds and end timelines. But is it also a hot spring?" "Hengwen Qingjun came to me after he returned to the Heavenly Court," Mingwei Qingjun said, "and I have already told him the whole story about you and Tianshu. Qingjun should have already told you all about it." "That's right," I answered. "We sat by the pond for half the day, and he told me everything." Mingwei Qingjun looked at me with compassion. Slowly, he asked, "Songyao Yuanjun, do you know what your greatest mistake during your trip to the mortal world was?" The Jade Emperor had asked me the same thing back at the Peach of Immortality Garden. His venerable self seemed to have already told me the answer. At the time, I had been unable to make heads or tails of it, but now I was completely clear. I should not have seduced Hengwen Qingjun while I was still bound to Tianshu Qingjun, I replied, or seduced him into giving mortal love a try. Mingwei Qingjun still looked at me with compassion. Not fully closing his eyes, he said, "Wrong. You should not have let Hengwen Qingjun know of mortal love, then involve that fox." What Hengwen told me by the side of the lotus pond about the thread in Du Wen Ming had been like a bolt out of the blue that left me thunderstruck. But now, my mind was in such an absolute state of primal chaos that I might have been literally struck by lightning. Yeah, not gonna lie, I don't blame the guy. Like, it's a little out of left field. Like, okay. I got half credit, I guess. I staggered out of Mingwei Xingjun's residence. Mingwei had reached his hands into the fate-gazing pond, the spirals of mist that had risen, transforming into an image of Hengwen sleeping on the couch, where a snowy white fox had lowered its head, licking Hengwen's lips. Okay, again with the non-con kissing, kind of. No bueno. The mist had changed, producing another image. Hengwen was standing by the heavenly river, and a man was standing beside him. All I could see were his fluttering clothes, not his appearance, but even so I could tell that I was not that man. Back then, when Hengwen Qingjun was just born, the Jade Emperor ordered me to divine his fate for him, Mingwei Qingjun had said. It was foretold that Hengwen Qingjun was destined to undergo a love tribulation in his life. With that, snow fox spirit. Song Yao Yuanju, Mingwei Qingjun had continued. That day you should never have made Hengwen Qingjun understand mortal love, then allow that fox to get close to Hengwen Qingjun. You should never have let this fox risk all its cultivation to save Hengwen Qingjun, Mingwei Qingjun had said. Hengwen Qingjun owes him 1,000 years of cultivation and a debt of gratitude for saving his life. And you have to know that a debt owed is a debt to be repaid. The Jade Emperor initially thought that your only role was as the variable that had interfered with Tianshu Qingjun's and Nanming Daijun's destined fate, Mingwei Qingjun added. I would have expected you to also be the go-between for Hengwen Qingjun and that fox. A debt owed naturally must be repaid. Tianshu and I were bound by the thread of immortal bond. Mingwei Qingjun had said that he owed me a debt from the lifetime when he and Du Wenming. That was why he had protected me in the heavenly court and suffered so much. The fox, enamored with Hengwen, risked its life and 1,000 years of cultivation. Hengwen owed the fox, and now I owed Tianshu again. So it turned out that all predestined affinities were merely debts to be repaid. So it turned out that Hengwen's destined lot was the fox. I staggered on the secluded path I was now walking and could not help but give a bitter laugh. I had been an immortal in the heavenly court and had seen countless immortals, but in truth, the one who divined my fortune back then was the real immortal. As expected, I was still doomed to a fate of eternal solitude. Tianshu, Qingjun, and Nanming Daijun were made for each other. I was the one who got in the way and messed up their fates. Hengwen Qingjun was destined to undergo a love tribulation with a fox, and I, acting as the matchmaker, eventually made this a reality. Each had their own predestined affinity, just not with me. I was doomed to play supporting roles in these tales. If not a rod to serve as relationship wrecker, then a bridge to act as a go-between. That's really harsh. I'm kind of wondering if one of them is going to kind of go against what's written and choose love over that. But we'll have to see. I'm kind of laughing at myself a little bit because I just proclaimed, like, super confidently, I'm like, I'm so sure it's Hengwen. Now I'm like, I jinxed it. Jinxed it right there. I walked to Yao Guang Palace, and the heavenly soldiers on duty raised their halberds to intercept me. Could you gentlemen please do me a favor? I said. I come bearing no intention except to see Tianshu Qingjun. The heavenly soldiers studied me, their faces giving nothing away. He Yun stepped out from the side. The Jade Emperor did not prohibit Song Yao Yuanju from visiting Tianshu Qingjun. Just let him in. Much obliged, I cut my hands at He Yun, and he gave me a slight nod of his head in return. I strode into Yao Guang Palace. It was spacious, but empty inside. I saw Tianshu standing before the window. As I approached him, Tianshu turned around and suddenly said to me, "Everyone in the city died, right?" I went momentarily blank. "When the snow lion went berserk," Tianshu repeated. "Everyone in Luyang City died, didn't they?" It then dawned on me the incident he spoke of. Knowing Tianshu's temperament, he would no doubt blame himself for this incident. Thus, I said, "The snow lion suddenly went berserk. If you must blame someone, the responsibility lies on Mingwei, who writes the fates. Just have Yan Wang arrange a good reincarnation for the people of the city when they arrive in the underworld." Tianshu merely smiled. He had now reverted to his true form. As he was awaiting punishment, he simply wore a plain white robe, looking still as cold and indifferent as he always did. I hesitated for a moment before saying, "I never did make you out to be Du Wen Ming. I'm sorry." "It is of no consequence," Tianshu said. "I should be the one apologizing to you. It was supposed to be a casual acquaintance between us for one lifetime, nothing more. But you ended up getting implicated and bound to the thread of immortal bond. That's the name. I'm much obliged to you for taking care of me when I was in the mortal world, so I wanted to see you. I thought I would never get to see you again, but here you are." I lowered my head. "Don't bring up the mortal world. I feel even more ashamed at the mention of it. I treated you in every rotten way possible there is, and yet you have been helping me all this time. I've been in heaven. I owe you too much. This is all my fault, and I've dragged you down with me. The Jade Emperor knows the whole story, so he'll surely release you." Tianshu smiled again. "You sound like you are here to apologize and beg for forgiveness." I sputtered out a dry laugh. Tianshu and I were bound by the thread of immortal bond, but for some reason our conversations were still extremely awkward. "You feel you have implicated me and got me into trouble," Tianshu said, "and I, too, feel that I have implicated you. The truth is that I actually owe Nanming Daijun a lot. This debt here and that debt there. Who can really say for sure?" Tianshu turned aside and looked out of the window. "Actually, I've been thinking, ever since I returned from my time as Du Wanming, that one might as well be immortal." It is enough just being in the courtyard, watching the change of seasons and the blooming and wilting of the Lady Bank's roses. It trumps being in the heavenly court, embroiled in countless entanglements. Hearing his words, I sensed something amiss. I had enough experience dealing with Mu Ruoyan in the mortal world to know that these sounded like Tianshu's last words. They do sound pretty ominous, let's be real. I strode a big step forward and grabbed his sleeve. As expected, he was like a flimsy piece of paper that fell limply over. The immortal aura on him was extremely weak, and his divine glow was so faint it had nearly extinguished. I exclaimed, thunderstruck, "What have you done?" "All these years of entanglements. I really am too tired," Tianshu said with a smile. "Let's just forget about who owes whom. I no longer wish to care." I used a bit of my powers to probe, an expanse of icy coldness. Tianshu had actually shattered his own immortal essence. To think he would be even more ruthless than when he had been Mu Ruoyan. He wanted to be obliterated. So much that he would not leave even a smidgen of opportunity for anyone to salvage the situation. Tianshu extended a hand to stuff a piece of jade of mine into mine. "You have looked out so much for me. In fact, you actually don't owe me a thing. Thank you for all you did. Those childhood days in the mortal world." His eyes closed as his head drooped. There seemed to be a stabbing pain on the base of my little finger, followed by a gradual loosening. "Tianshu Qingjun, do you really think you're beyond saving with this one move?" So the immortal bond between us would prove useful after all. No matter when he sought death, I could always foil his attempts. I sighed and channeled a stream of immortal energy into his back, then took out something from the front of my robes and stuffed it into Tianshu's mouth. All at once, light enveloped his body. Not the silver light of Tianshu Qingjun, but the blue light of Song Yao Yuanju. I said to the person shrouded in that light, "Qingjun, I'm sorry. You were friends with me when you were Du Wenming, so you should know that what I, Song Yao, fear the most in life is owing a debt. Even if you wouldn't let me repay this debt, I still have to repay it. From now on, when you regain your immortal body, all the past will be wiped clean. And as of this moment onward, you and I do not owe the other anymore." I looked at that jade pendant in my hand, and with a gentle clench of my fist, crushed it completely into powder. I left Yao Guang Palace. He Yun was standing right in front of the palace gate. I said, "I've just talked to Tianshu Qingjun, and he has seen the light. May I ask Envoy He to intercede with the Jade Emperor on his behalf? Let him have a moment of quiet these 2 days, and the rest can be discussed later." The Jade Emperor's initial order was to have Tianshu Qingjun meditate for 2 days, He Yun said. "So Yuanju, you may rest assured." I thanked him and asked in a seemingly offhanded way, "Do you happen to know where that fox is locked up?" "The Jade Emperor has ordered Bai Hua Lingjun to watch over it for the time being," He Yun answered. I took the walk to Bai Hua Lingjun's residence. The young immortal attendant informed me that Lingjun was not around, as he had been invited to tea by Hengwen Qingjun. Needless to say, Hengwen must have asked Bai Hua to take good care of the fox. Bai Hua Lingjun's absence suited my purpose. One less sorrowful melodrama of farewells played out. "Can I see that fox that the Jade Emperor ordered Lingjun to watch?" I asked. Put in a spot, the young immortal attendant scrunched up his face. The Jade Emperor only gave the order to forbid Hengwen Qingjun from looking at it, didn't he? I said. So it doesn't matter if I look at it, right? The young immortal attendant thought about it carefully for a moment before acquiescing. All right. The young immortal attendant led me to a stone chamber in the backyard and opened the door. That fox is right in there. I'd like to see it alone, I said. Take your leave first and lock the door. All right, the young immortal attendant said, but be quick. I entered the stone chamber and heard the door click shut. The fox was laying on a prayer cushion set on a jade bed. Its fur was a dry, disheveled mess, and its head was resting on its front paws. On seeing me, it partially lifted its eyelids. I sat down on the edge of the bed. How are you doing, Furball? The fox closed its eyes and remained motionless. If the Jade Emperor forced you to stop liking Hengwen Qingjun, what would you do? I asked. The fox's ears twitched. What if the Jade Emperor flayed your skin and crushed your bones into ashes just to force you not to like Hengwen Qingjun? I prodded. The fox's ears twitched again, its expression dauntless. Excellent. Then remember my words today, I said. Hengwen prefers his tea mild. When he writes, he often sets his brush in the ink brush washer and forgets to keep it away. He has to drink himself drunk or he'll never be done with it, so you can't let him have all the wine he wants. He doesn't have any bad habits when it comes to sleeping, but remember that he has to drink the first brew of sparrow's tongue tea when he wakes up. He tends to forget the time when he reads official documents, so you have to drag him outdoors from time to time to take a breather. He has someone under his command called Lu Jing who will conjure out a pile of official documents at all hours for him to look over. There's no need for you to pay this immortal any attention. Be mindful when Donghua Daijun, Lingjun, Tai Bai, Qingjun, and the others come looking for him to go drinking. He has a habit of forgetting and losing things. When he leaves his seat, check his table to see if there's a fan or something else that he forgot to take. He doesn't really eat sweet stuff, and even when it comes to fruit kernels or nuts, he only eats the salted ones, not the candied ones. His pillow has to be low, and his bedding has to be soft. Take note that his tea water should also be an agreeable temperature. The fox sat up and looked at me out of the corner of its eyes in puzzlement. Affably, I petted its head. Stay by Hengwen's side from now on. The fox shivered under my palm. I sighed again and recited an incantation. A blue light materialized into my palm and enveloped the fox, going from a weak glow to a brilliant radiance before gradually dimming and diminishing. Eventually, it was all absorbed into the fox's body. The fox crouched on the cushion and looked at me in astonishment. Furball, I said, you have half of my cultivation in you already. You can now take on human form again. With a little more cultivation, you'll be able to become an immortal. Furball leapt to the ground and rolled to take on a human form. Now that it had my cultivation, it seemed to be a tad more pleasing to the eyes. Oh my goodness, even in this sense, he's very vain. The fox looked at me. Why are you doing this? To tell you the truth, my immortal essence and the other half of my cultivation have already been given to someone else as a repayment of my debt, I explained. I am now being sustained by spells, and in a few days I'll be reduced to nothing but ashes. This remaining half of my cultivation will be wiped out along with me, so I might as well give it to you. But I'm not giving it for nothing. The debt of gratitude that Hengwen Qingjun owes you for saving this life, I've repaid it for him. From this moment on, he does not owe you anything. The fox looked at me befuddled. Gradually, a hint of sorrow washed over his expression. This immortal lord found myself quite melancholic too. Soon enough, I would fade into oblivion. I don't think so. We'll see. Do me a favor now, won't you? I said. I wish to see Hengwen, but I don't want to see him in this state, so I'd like to borrow your appearance. Turn into me and leave this place first. You have my immortal aura on you, so the young immortal attendant can't tell the difference. Come back again after I get to see Hengwen. You and Hengwen have a predestined romantic relationship, so the Jade Emperor will not make things difficult for you. In all probability, you can remain by his side to cultivate. Later, when you become an immortal, remember all that I've told you. My last words outmatched Tianshu's in emotional impact. The rims of the fox's eyes even reddened just that little bit. All right, he answered in a hushed tone, then transformed into this immortal lord. Let me help you turn into me. You should reduce your use of the immortal arts, then you can hang on a little longer. I turned into the fox and found the world had gotten a lot broader. Even that small prayer cushion had suddenly become bigger. Furball walked out, and I huddled down on the cushion. Sure enough, an immortal aura approached a moment later. The door to the stone chamber opened, and in came Baihua. Baihua walked over to the stone couch. He sighed. What am I to do with you, fox? Hengwen Qingjun insists on seeing you, but he can't come over to my residence. Behave yourself. This lord shall take you to see Hengwen Qingjun. Before I could nod, a bag swallowed my head, and everything before my eyes turned pitch black. I heard Baihua Lingjun say, Stay in the bag and don't move. This lord will take you to see Hengwen Qingjun. I remained in the bag, sniffing at the scents seeping in through the fabric seams, and from time to time, vaguely determining where I was. After about a quarter of an hour, Baihua Lingjun seemed to cross over an enclosing wall. That was when I knew we had probably arrived at Wei Yuan Palace. Sure enough, after Baihua Lingjun strode over a threshold, he said, Qingjun, I've brought the fox over. The Jade Emperor will not put it on trial today, but you have to return it to me tomorrow. He set the bag along with this immortal lord on what seemed to be a board on the tabletop. Sorry. Thank you, Hengwen said, tone soft. Baihua Lingjun bade farewell and left. Light appeared overhead from the opening of the bag. I looked up and saw Hengwen. Looking up like this, Hengwen's face appeared larger than usual, which meant I could also look at him even closer than usual. I tilted my neck to look up, but Hengwen frowned. You don't seem to be Xuan Li. I broke out into a cold sweat. Hengwen's eyes were truly sharp. I shamelessly held my head up and wagged my tail. Hengwen could not help but laugh. You are not Xuan Li, but you do resemble it. Don't tell me the heavenly soldiers took the wrong one. Who could you possibly be? He petted the top of my head, and I turned my head and licked his hand. I barely had any immortal powers left in my body, so there was no chance of Hengwen sussing out my identity. I licked his hand again, and Hengwen reached behind my 2 front paws to lift me up. Well, then, we can say it was fated that you were brought to the heavenly court, and made it to my residence, no less. I'll play the host and let you stay for a day, then take you to the Jade Emperor tomorrow to have him release you back into the mortal world. I continued my brazen nodding and wagged my tail again. I lay on the chair beside Hengwen to keep him company as he looked over his documents, which he did for quite a while. Then I rested on his lap for the time it took him to leisurely finish 2 cups of tea. He patted me on the back. A pity there's nothing you like to eat in the residence. I'll get some fine wine. Do you want some? He set a dish of the good wine before my paws. I lowered my head and drank it, then shamelessly wagged my tail yet again. Hengwen laughed, the sound quite cheerful. When it was time to turn in, Hengwen set a cushion on the chair beside the bed for me. I crouched on it, waited for him to lie down himself, then ricocheted myself off the ground and into his bed. You want to sleep on the bed too? Hengwen asked in wonder. I looked ingratiatingly at him. Hengwen sighed softly. Then so be it. He patted the empty spot beside him, and I lay down next to him. I curled up, sticking to Hengwen with the quilt between us, and closed my eyes. I felt quite fulfilled. No wonder the fox was always designing to get into Hengwen's bed. To truth be told, if I could accompany him like this even as a beast, I would be willing. Hengwen seemed to have fallen sound to sleep. I rose, shook my fur, and crouched by the pillow to watch him. Hengwen. Did you know, when I first saw you several thousand years ago, I only saw your back from afar as you left Wei Yuan Palace. Just from that, it was from that time onward that I liked you. At that time, you were so high up above the masses and far beyond my reach, I could only gaze at you from a distance. But we would meet again by the Lotus Pond, and you would come to my residence. For several thousand years thereafter, you and I formed a friendship. But somehow, I always had the feeling that while you were near by my side, you were also very far apart, and I still could not touch you. Perhaps it was just as what Yao Xiang said in The Mortal World. The truth is that I had never come to understand what love was throughout all these years. I finally knew of this word after I ascended to the heavenly court. But this word would not avail itself to me. I have gained plenty from all that has transpired in the mortal world, and I think I have more than made up for all of it these few thousand years. Even if I was only a bridge serving as a go-between, it was all worthwhile. I wish with all my heart to be a dutiful immortal who knows my place. I wholeheartedly wish to remain in the heavenly court, for the days of an immortal are long and never-ending. Even if I could not touch you, I would be content to remain by your side for time eternal. But here I am, looking at you like this. I'm in no one's debt, just like you. Destiny has decided that I cannot remain by your side, but to watch you and touch you like this now, that in itself already speaks of a deep affinity between us, doesn't it not? Does it not? I lowered my head to lick Hengwen's lips, took another look at him, then jumped to the ground and left his chamber. The heavenly court was quiet all around. I wondered where the fox had wandered to in this immortal lord's guise. Let him be. At any rate, I had already told him to make his way back to Baihua Lingjun's residence tomorrow. I reverted to my original form and encountered a few heavenly soldiers on the way, but perhaps the Jade Emperor had already given the instruction to allow me unimpeded access in the heavenly court, because heavenly soldiers did not really react when they saw me. I came before Tai Bai Qingjun's residence. I did not have the capacity to somersault over the wall anymore, so I played by the rules and had the heavenly envoy announce my arrival. Qingjun, having already fallen asleep, came out to greet me with a disheveled beard and bleary eyes. Sung Yao Yuanju, what can I do for you? I'd like to sneak out of the heavenly court and lie low, I said with an apologetic smile. Please think of a way for me to slip out of the heavenly court. Qingjun's beard promptly puffed up. You want to escape to the mortal world? Then what about Tianshu Qingjun? What about Hengwen Qingjun? You dragged these two immortal lords through your mess, and now you want to flee all by yourself? I have no choice either, I said. Think about it. If I remain in the heavenly court, the Jade Emperor will go by the book and conduct a public trial in Lingxiao Palace before all the various immortals. Even if I shoulder all the charges, Tianshu Xingjun and Hengwen Qingjun will be punished along with me. So I might as well escape to the mortal world where I can lie low and all the charges will be pinned on me. That way, Tianshu and Hengwen will be fine. Your gears sure are turning hard. Jingxing gave me a quick glance and stroked his beard with his hand. Oh, well, let's see if I can sneak you out of the heavenly court today. Elated, I said. Thank you, Qingjun. No need to stand on ceremony, Tai Bai Qingjun said. But don't blame me if your plan doesn't pan out as you hoped and ended up getting captured back again. I cupped my hands. Of course. Tai Bai Qingjun covered me in a golden shield and concealed me in his sleeve, then straightened his clothes and stepped out of his residence. Through the slit in the opening of his sleeve, I could make out the southern heavenly gate. The heavenly soldier standing guard asked, Qingjun, where are you headed? By order of the Jade Emperor, I'm headed to the immortal world to observe the present state of affairs in the world, Tai Bai Qingjun answered. He handed over the gate tally, and the heavenly soldier led him through. Tai Bai Qingjun took me along as he descended to the mortal world and released me from the barrier. I looked around me. We were on a mountaintop. You fled to the mortal world, Tai Bai Qingjun said. As to where, this lord does not know. I reassured him that that was the case. Then Tai Bai Qingjun rose on the clouds and returned to the heavenly court. Hang on. I struggled in my journey from the top of the mountain down to the middle. My immortal powers were exhausted. In an effort to conceal the drain from Tai Bai Qingjun, I had consumed even more divine spells, and now I was on the verge of giving out. I found a cave among the shrubbery in the middle of the mountain and made my way in. It was pretty clean inside the cave, and the soil on the ground was very soft and flat. The entrance faced east, so when I lay down just so, I could see the morning mist and a ray of sunlight. The immortals of the heavenly court should be able to more or less understand what had happened once they saw Tianshu, and the sight of the fox should seal the deal. This was the best outcome. I was immortal to begin with, so even if I were to be reduced to ashes, I had to return to the mortal world. Hengwen would be a little less heartbroken if he did not see this happen with his eyes. He would also be able to get over it sooner. There was no denying the sadness swelling in me as I faced eternal oblivion. I thought, if a wisp of my soul could be retained, even if I was a grass-dwelling bug, that would have been fine too. But when a beam of morning sun shone on me, I was suddenly enlightened. Whether I was a person doomed to a fate of eternal solitude, a rod meant to wreck relationships, or a bridge to act as a go-between, they were all just different facets of a life lived. Think of it from another perspective. All these years, Hengwen and I had in heaven were something no mortal could have ever had, even if they had the chance to dream of it over several lifetimes. I got to be together with him from dawn to dusk, from day to night. I was about to face eternal oblivion. I would no longer exist in the world, and the world to me. Hengwen and I were together up to the point I turned to dust, and that was already lifetimes together for time eternal. A sense of closure draped itself over me all at once. The immortal energy coursing through my body was already exhausted. It felt empty inside, and my vision began to blur. So, this was oblivion. That's all there is to it. In my daze, I saw Hengwen standing beside me. Mortals were known to develop hallucinations when they died, so it turned out that one would also hallucinate before being completely wiped from existence. It was nice to be able to get one more look at him, even if it was but a mere illusion. I don't think it's an illusion, bud. Chapter 25. Depressed, I lay prone on the floor in the middle of the room, wiggling my antennas. This room had a door, windows, and 4 walls, but was otherwise empty. It was as if there was some invisible barrier covering it. No matter how I charged and barged, I could not find a crack to burrow into or a small hole in which to hide. In the middle of the barrier, there was only a table with a plate of pastries that emanated a faint aroma. A person stood beside the table. He was all smiles as he waited for me to crawl my way up to the table. Let me start over. A person stood beside the table. He was all smiles as he waited for me to crawl my way up the table and onto the plate. That should not have been that hard, but for some reason I just could not say it right. A trap to catch me. I'd be a fool if I were to crawl in. I had originally lived in another courtyard, but having gotten tired of eating the kitchen scraps in the house, crawled all the long journey to this courtyard, wanting to see if there was anything novel to dine on. How was I to know that I would be entrapped inside this room after following the smell over the small hill that was the door threshold? No matter what I did, I could not find my way out. I saw nothing else in the room other than that table, and when I saw that person, I knew that was the end of me. I lay motionless on the ground. That person looked at me, and I too looked at him. Whether he was to crush me or trample me to death, I had absolutely nowhere to flee. But even so, don't expect me to get into the trap myself. He looked at me and said affably, "Come on up and eat. I won't hurt you. These are for you." I could understand his words, but I would absolutely not believe him. I continued to lie prone. Do it fast if you want to catch or kill me. Don't be so wishy-washy with all these tricks. I saw the feet under his robe move softly as he walked closer to me. I nonchalantly jiggled my antennas. Oh my gosh. Instead of lifting his foot, he crouched down and placed the plate of giant pastries on the ground close to me. The aroma of grease was indeed very tempting, but I would not be so easily swayed. He said slowly, "It'd be easy if I wanted to hurt you. Why would I bother giving you food? Then again, if I really want to hurt you, then there would be no escape for you today. So you might as well eat your fill." I shook my antenna again and thought, he's right. I could not run either way, so I might as well fleece off a decent meal. I swiftly climbed up the edge of the plate and the enticing mountain of pastries, then dove headfirst into the soft, pillowy, fluffy crusts. I ate until I was bloated before I came to a contented stop. I felt like my carapace must be glistening with grease right about now. I found a flat spot on the mountain of pastries, lay on my stomach, and drifted off into a comfortable sleep. When I woke up, he was still at that table. I guarded the mountain of pastries, eating and sleeping and eating. A day and a night went by, and he was still standing by. Another morning came around. I was gradually waking up after a comfortable sleep when I heard the door creak and he went out. I swiftly made my way down the table and tried to find a crack where I could make my escape. But the barrier I could not see remained securely sealed, and I could not find even a hint of a way out. Just as I was searching, he returned. I immediately hid myself in the shadow at the foot of the table. The barrier, however, did not work on him, and he simply walked through it. I heard a thud on the table. He bent over as if he knew where I was and said with the same affability as before, "I've brought a plate of new snacks. You can have the latest ones." Slowly, I crawled up along the leg of the table to the surface, up the edge of the white and icy cool porcelain dish, and into a gap between the pastries. Next to the porcelain dish was a large plate, filled with clear water. When he swapped it to the 5th plate of new snacks, I lay prone on the table and looked at him. Don't humans all need to sleep? He had hardly moved or slept these days. He was even more sturdy than me. I sprawled over the mountain of pastries, engrossed in nibbling on a gigantic piece of fluffy puff pastry. "Are the snacks I gave you delicious?" he asked. I jiggled my antennas. "If you were to search for your own food, would you be able to find stuff as good as this?" he added. I nibbled on the puff pastry and thought about it, hesitantly, my antennas still. "Would you be willing to let me give you food if I don't shut you in?" he asked. "In exchange, you won't go anywhere else and will remain living here." I hugged a corner of the puff pastry and thought about it. This was not something I could guarantee. Who could say for sure that I would not get tired of eating all of these things? But this man really was an oddball for wanting to raise a cockroach. Rather than let some other cockroaches benefit from these things, I might as well take them for myself. Suppose I could say yes for the time being. And thus, I jiggled my antennas. I never expected him to be really delighted. He immediately broke into a smile. Hugging my puff pastry, I froze for a moment. He looked really good when he smiled. Among the humans, he could be considered one of the more good-looking ones, I guess. Surprisingly enough, that smile was as satisfying as the puff pastries. All right, place your bets. Tianshu or Hengwen? I'm still betting on Hengwen, but you never know. I've been very surprised in this book. Sure enough, he did keep his promise. The barrier was gone, and I could come and go freely. I made a den for myself in a crack in the corner of the room. Every day I would make my way up the table to feast on the snacks and water he had set there. Once I had eaten my fill, I would cross the threshold and make the long journey to the yard to appreciate the scenery and aid digestion. A bed was added to this house. It was on this bed that he slept at night. He was the only one living in the courtyard, but a man in an apricot-colored long robe often came visiting, with a massive cloth bundle in his hand. There were also a few in ink-blue robes and dazzling gowns among the frequent visitors. The first time the man in the bedazzling, unlined gown came, I was nibbling on sweetened red bean paste atop the mountain of snacks. Always the considerate one, the man who fed me would pry the snacks apart so I could feast on both the crusts and the fillings. I was very satisfied. Just as I was contentedly nibbling away, the man in the bedazzling robe moved his gigantic face close to me and immediately let loose a sigh. I did not quite manage to grab on tight to the snack I was hugging and was blown off to the edge of the plate. The dazzling robe shook his head. I look at his present circumstances, truly lamentable. Not only had he blown me off, he had even made such a hypocritical show of sighing. He blew you off, huh? Sorry, ignore me. I did not like this person. Ink Blue Robe also sighed the first time he came. He did not say a word, but shook his head and left. All these people came and went, but he always remained in the courtyard. Not once had I ever seen him leave. I found him rather weird. Sometimes he would sit at the table reading a book. There was a time he set a book on the table, and I crawled onto his book to take a little stroll. He lifted the book along with me and brought me closer to look at me at eye level and smiled. I felt that he was indeed quite the looker when he smiled. Probably not get tired of the snacks he gave me for quite a while to come. I did not know how long I lived with him in this courtyard. In any case, the grass in this courtyard had all withered and yellowed, and all these hindrances of leaves were strewn on the ground. That day, I went to the yard to digest my food and crawled my way to the side of the pond, but unexpectedly a sudden gust of wind blew me into the water. I paddled, struggling to make my way to the edge of the pond, when a large, gaping mouth of a fish suddenly broke through the surface and enveloped me whole. Pitch black all around. I wondered who else would get lucky with those snacks on his table. I crouched on an old tree branch and shook my pitch-black feathers. That particular scholar under the tree had still yet to leave. He held a fruit. One moment. I am apparently struggling with being verbacious today. I might not have used that correctly. I'm struggling today. We'll just put it at that. That particular scholar under the tree had still yet to leave. He held a few crumbs of food in his palm, trying to lure me over to peck at his hand. I flapped my wings, craned my neck, and cawed. I'm such a strong and sturdy one. It's not like I'm a sparrow, so why would I eat off human beings' hands? The scholar, however, was still standing. The young monk, sweeping the falling leaves under the tree, said, "Benefactor, don't stand any more. This crow has lived in that tree for several years. No one has ever fed it, and it doesn't eat anything from human hands. On the contrary, those few sparrows under the eaves are obedient and familiar with people." The scholar finally retracted his hand. "Is that so?" He sprinkled the crumbs under the tree. Not that I was not giving him face by not eating his food, but his palm probably could not handle my physique. I flapped my wings, flew down to the ground where I crouched next to him, and pecked at the crumbs, and looked up to see him looking at me with a smile. I had been living in this old tree in front of the back door of this small temple for a long time. I used to live on another mountaintop, but there had been a tempest that blew my tree down. My parents and brothers had flown their own respective ways. At first, I had moved to a tree before the door of a household. I would fly over the ridge of their roof every morning to caw and remind them of the time. But the mistress of that household insisted I was an inauspicious omen, so she struck off my nest with a bamboo pole and even greeted me with flying stones. I had swapped places, one after another, but was always loathed by all. In the end, I had no choice but to fly to this tree behind the small temple, where I built a nest overnight. The next day, the young monk stepped out to sweep the floor. Looking at me, he shouted, "Master, there's a crow on the tree." The old monk leaned partially out of the back door and looked up at me. "Amitabha," It's a good thing to have a bird settling in here. Let it stay. The monks in the temple were on a bland vegetarian diet all year round, while I loved my meat. However, there were a lot of easy-to-catch wild game on this mountaintop. Crouching on the tree every day, I knew everything about what that old monk punished the young monk by making him copy scriptures, or when the young monk groused about the abbot bullying him. Sorry, I slowed down because I was like, am I reading this correctly? And I was. After pecking all the crumbs on the ground, I flew back to the branch. From that day on, he came to see me every day, and each time he would sprinkle food all over the ground for me. I heard the young monk ask the old monk, Master, Master, that benefactor comes and goes every day without a trace, and we don't know where he stays either. He can't be a ghost, can he? Amitabha, the old monk said, that benefactor has an extraordinary bearing. He's definitely not a ghost. As a monk, you must remember not to make wild guesses and cast aspirations on others. I heard the young monk ask the old monk again, Master, Master, that benefactor always comes and visits the crow every day. Why is that? Amitabha, the old monk answered, everything in the secular world is a web of worldly attachments to begin with. Cause and effect, I'm afraid only he himself knows. I too wanted to know why the scholar came to visit me every day. He came every day, be it sunny, overcast, windy, raining, or snowing. Later, whenever I saw him coming, I would crouch on a low branch. Sometimes he would help the young monk sweep the falling leaves. Sometimes he would teach the young monk how to write. And sometimes he would hold a book to read. But most times he would stand or sit under the tree and talk to me frequently. He spoke of how good the mountain view was, how lively the marketplace at the foot of the mountain was, and what had happened in the marketplace today and would occur tomorrow. Everything he spoke of was about humans, but I could understand it all, so I listened. Gradually, the young monk came to be on a familiar term with him. He even made the special effort of preparing a stool for him, which he would take out for him to sit on as soon as he came. The old monk would often play with round black and white stones with him under the tree too, and I would crouch on the bench, sometimes cawing a sound or two. That day, the weather was abnormally stifling, and he only left in the evening. At night, the wind started howling, thunder started crashing, and the rain started pouring down in torrents. I was just about to seek shelter under the eaves of the small temple when a bolt of lightning from heaven struck down right on my head. At that very instant, the thunder's crash rang out. I wondered if he would come tomorrow onward, now that the tree was no more. I half floated in the water, my head peeking out. A man in a particularly bedazzled robe at the edge of the pond watched me and sighed. How truly lamentable. How was he born a cooter? I did not like to hear that. I was clearly a tortoise. Why did he come? All right. Okay. Now I gotta look this up because cooter means something different where I'm from. Okay. The term cooter refers to several species of freshwater turtles, not fish. So specifically, it's a common name for various turtles in the genus Pseudonym, also known as cooters or sliders. Most well known is the eastern river cooter, found in the central and eastern United States. The term cooter is also used as a general term for any hard-shelled turtle in the southern U.S., so refers to a dish made from turtle meat. I have never heard a turtle being referred to as a cooter. I guess it's also a fish. But I guess he's saying he's a turtle. But I guess this is what the fish version looks like. This is the fish version. And then turtle. I guess this is what the turtle looks like. There. Focus. Focus. All right. Huh. Well, that's my fun fact for the day. All right. I knew what a cooter was. I should have just kept reading. I knew what a cooter was. They called certain freshwater turtles cooters. Turtle shells are relatively flat and thin without any patterns, while tortoise shells are round and smooth with well-defined sections and distinctive patterns. I could have just kept reading. I floated back up to the water's surface again and revealed my shell to show him. Bedazzling Robe continued, sighing. This creature has a long life. Just how many donkey years are you going to have to keep watching over him for this lifetime? Speaking of which, another person by the pond said, was just about to ask you. I asked you to do me some favor and pull some strings so that he could reincarnate into something more decent. Why is he still like this? Right? It was a turtle. I legit have never heard a turtle called that in my entire life. Like, okay. I'm partially laughing at myself that it was literally the next sentence that explained exactly what it was. Oh. I originally used to live comfortably in a large lake, but rainfall was high this year, and the lake had overflowed its banks. I was swept away into a river, then swept along the river into a small pond. Someone eventually came along to cast a net and hauled me up along with a bunch of fish, shrimps, and crabs. We had been carried to the marketplace to be sold. I crouched in a waterless wooden basin and crawled around a few times. Eventually, I just lay down flat, resigned to my fate. They said that those like us who were caught would be put into boiling hot water and slowly scalded to death. I'd wondered if that was true. I crouched in the basin, watching as people came and went. Those fish, shrimp, and crabs were all carried away by person after person. I shrank my head and waited, till the corner of some blue-colored attire stood before the wooden basin. I heard him say, "I'll take this tortoise." I let him carry me home. He did not put me into boiling hot water, but into this pond and let me live in it. Fun fact. Turtles were actually considered good luck in a marriage, if I'm remembering correctly. I think I am. Which I want to fact check real quick since I'm... Turtles were considered good luck. They also had different kinds of turtles for different things of luck. There's 5 kinds. Yes, in many cultures. Well, I mean longevity, if nothing else. He came to that pond every day to scatter some food scraps and talk to me. Sometimes I would crawl out of the pond and bask in the sun by the rock at the edge of the pond, listening to him as he spoke of how it was a good day today, of how boisterous the marketplace outside was, and of how he wanted to plant lotuses in the pond next year. I had been quite happy living in my old lake, but this place was not too bad either. By the way, sorry about the interruptions between the readings. There are just some things that I think are fascinating and that you might be interested in too. So I hope it's not too distracting. The weather got colder and colder day after day, and I got lazier and lazier. Well, thank you, Cookielicious. I dug a hole in the silt at the bottom of the pond. After I was done taking a long sleep, it would be springtime again, when the flowers bloom. He said that peach blossoms in spring were the best, and I loved to look at them, but I did not know what peach blossoms were. Perhaps I would get my chance to see them after I emerged from my hibernation. I burrowed into the hole and started to sleep. Somehow, I kept having the indistinct feeling that he was still talking by the pond, and it woke me up. I was seized with a sudden urge to crawl over and see him. The pond water was icy cold, and the top was sealed with ice. I struck it with my head for a long time before I broke through and crawled out with great effort. It was night, and the sky was dark. There was piece after piece of something icy landing on me. Snow, I guess. In a moment of inattention, as I crawled over a rock, I slipped and very unluckily fell on my back. No matter how I tried to turn over, I failed to do so. The snow kept falling on my 4 limbs and head. I struggled and struggled until I could move no more. I lay rigidly on my back and looked at that bright, shiny place ahead. He must be there. I had never seen peach blossoms, but peach blossoms were surely warmer than snowflakes. My semi-conscious days, I thought, it was actually a fortunate thing that I had been swept out of that lake. A bedazzling robe stood in front of me inside. This is truly lamentable. It's getting more and more outrageous each time. I propped up my eyelids and looked at him. These city folk are so ignorant. Of all the wild boars on the mountain, I'm the most dashing. While the female wild boars melt into a puddle when they see me. They made him a boar. That's funny. Another man stood beside Bedazzling Robe and looked at me in silence. I used to have a merry life living on the mountaintop, but in a moment of inattention while dashing in the forest this morning, I had fallen into a trap. These 2 men immediately descended from the sky and released me. Feeling very displeased, I snorted, but I could not move my body. I could only let these 2 men size me up and down. I felt even more displeased. The other man said, "Let it go first. We'll talk about it again when we get back." Bedazzling Robe said, "Ahem. Or let me take it back to Ray's. These atrocious reincarnations can't be helped. My residence, he could probably become an immortal after several thousand years." I was shocked. How could I be raised like some domesticated pig? What a great humiliation. The moment my body could move, I took to my hooves and ran. I ran and ran and ran, running until I saw red. Without realizing it, I had run to the edge of a steep cliff, and in a moment of oversight, I failed to brake in time. My hooves trod on empty air, and then with a whoosh, I plunged. Chapter 26. I stood in the streets of the capital, taking in the peonies blooming in the flower market. Allegedly, crimson peonies were the rarest and most valuable of all. Of all the 20+ years I had lived, I had seen bright red ones, white ones, and green ones. But I had never ever seen crimson ones. The day before yesterday, Mudan Shu had sent someone to deliver me an invitation, saying that he had a pot of crimson peony. This was originally a rare treasure in Hongfa Temple's collection, and the abbot had passed it on to him as a gift after he passed away. It bloomed today, so he was hosting a flower appreciation meet before his house of unsurpassed beauty and wanted me to attend. Initially, this young master had no affection for these flowers and plants. Who cares if it's red or green? It's just a flower, isn't it? However, I had been frequenting Chunong Pavilion as of late, and Ying Yu said she loved peonies, so I might as well make a trip to this flower appreciation meet and buy a pot of peonies to elicit a smile from her. The flower appreciation meet started early morning, at the hour of 10. I arrived a little early, so I wandered off for a leisurely walk. By the time I returned, it was nearly at the established hour. The tune of the flute and the melody of a kin had already been performed as an opening beside the flower terrace. A string of firecrackers had been hung beside the flower terrace. Mudan Shu lit it personally. After the popping noises stopped, he delivered a speech. Then he lifted the veil and revealed that potted peony of his. The flower was a shade of deep red and exuded magnificence in its delicate tenderness. Indeed, a marvelous specimen. My heart soared at the sight as I heard someone in the crowd say it aloud. A marvelous specimen. What a strange coincidence. Countless people were shouting adulatory. Yep, that's better, not adultery. Adulatory praises, and yet out of all of them, I heard this one. What was more, this voice struck me as inexplicably familiar, as if I had heard it many times before. I looked into the crowd and saw a man all dressed in azure standing among the people. He turned aside and looked over, and I froze for a moment. It was like the entire marketplace of people and peonies had all faded into nothingness. For a fleeting instant, I felt as if I had met him before. I walked into the crowd of people and cupped my hand, said him. This humble one is Qin Ying Mu. May I ask for your esteemed name? He flashed a candid smile. My humble surname is Shao, and my given name is Heng. We know who it is. After exchanging a couple of pleasantries, he looked like he was going to leave. I hurried up to him and said, This humble one feels a sense of closeness like that of old friends with you at first meeting, and so I'd like to invite you to the restaurant for a drink. I wonder if you would give me the pleasure of your company? He did not turn down the offer and readily said, Sure. It was still the hour of 10, and the restaurant waiter said that it was still too early for them to start selling wine. This young master set a silver ingot on the table, and he immediately changed his tune to, We have ready-made fine wines and dishes. The waiter was all bows as he solicitously led this young master and Zhao Heng into the most exquisite private room, where a few plates of fine cold dishes and a jar of high-grade Shaoxing wine was promptly served. I raised my cup to the person opposite me. Here. My courtesy name is Hengwen, he said. You can just call me Hengwen. It feels a tad too constrictive to speak so politely. Hengwen. Reciting this name felt somehow familiar. In that case, I said, I shall not stand on ceremony with you. My courtesy name is Nan Shan. You can just call me Nan Shan, too. He smiled. Before we knew it, this bout of wine drinking extended well into the evening. I drank like I had not drunk wine in hundreds of lifetimes. I just wanted to keep drinking. We drank in the restaurant until afternoon, and he said he was staying in an inn on another street. Staggering, I followed him to his inn and entered his room, then shouted again for more wine and dishes to go with it. I remember I recited the entire genealogical tree of my Qin clan to him. I told him how my father once had my fortune told when I was a child. The fortune teller said that I would be lucky in love this life. I was fated to be a ladies' man. Holding up his wine cup, he looked at me and asked, "Oh, so was it accurate?" I didn't believe it at first either, I said immediately. But it was right on the money. Not that I'm bragging, but I can tell you that courtless courtesans in the pleasure quarters of the capital are crying and waiting for me to redeem their freedom. He said, with the shadow of a smile playing on his lips. They couldn't have already gotten together with some poor scholar or rouge seller, could they? I hope they are not merely using you as a raft to get across the river. I frowned. How could I be that kind of sucker? Not only a scapegoat, but also a cuckold. He let out an inscrutable laugh and said nothing. Did not know how long we had been drinking, but at any rate, by the time we finished a whole jar, the candle on the table had already burned out. I drank until I was in a daze, and he too drank until he was unsteady on his feet, so we simply lay down on the bed and slept. I rolled over in bed and said to him, "All these years, and it is only today that I get to drink to my heart's content." He uttered a sound of acknowledgement and went back to sleep. The next day, when I woke up, the guest room was empty. He was nowhere to be found. The innkeeper downstairs said that he had not seen that young master go out at all, and the room had not even been paid for yet. He had disappeared, just like that. I never managed to find him again over the next couple of days. I searched everywhere I could and paid for that same room in the inn by the day, reserving it for him. The innkeeper told me that the young master had not said where he had come from, and no one anywhere else recognized him. For some inexplicable reason, I just could not stop looking for him. It was clearly a chance meeting, yet I could not forget him. I searched from the Dragon Boat Festival on the 5th day of the 5th month this year to the Mid-Autumn Festival on the 15th day, the 8th month the following year. For more than a year, no matter who I drank with, it all tasted bland to me. I dreamed befuddling dreams when I slept, where I was a wild boar today and a tortoise tomorrow. One day I dreamed I was in some place enveloped in mist, and he was standing just in front. I called out his name, and he turned around, looking as if he was about to speak. But then I woke up. This one day, I strolled despondently into a small temple and drew lots to seek divine guidance in my search for him. The person who interpreted the lot I drew was a bad one, and seeing the person I wanted to see again was as difficult as a monkey trying to pluck the moon off the sky. The lot interpreter looked at this young master's crestfallen face and comforted me, saying there was actually still a glimmer of hope in this lot, for the monkey plucking the moon was better than the monkey fishing for the moon. How so? I asked. The lot interpreter explained. When the monkey fishes for the moon, it fishes for the moon in the water. No matter how it fishes for it, it is but a mere reflection. When the monkey plucks the moon, however, the moon it gets would be the real thing. And I said, "But the monkey can't fly." Disconsolate, I fished out a silver, placed it on the lot interpreter's table, and walked out of the temple. The street bustled with a crowd of people coming and going. I strolled to the side of the street, where I heard someone greet me. "Sir, Would you like to take a seat? So I sat and heard him ask, what would you like to order? Whatever's on the menu, I said offhandedly. It did not take long before a large steaming bowl landed on the table beside me with a thud. The person carrying the bowl said with a solicitous smile, You seem to be hungry out of your wits, so I took it upon myself to make you a large bowl of wonton noodles. Wonton noodles? I perked myself up a little to look at it. I'd never eaten this sort of food before. I took a pair of chopsticks to pick up some noodles and delivered them into my mouth. Such a unique taste. An old man slurping noodles beside me looked at me and opened his mouth, revealing half a mouthful of his food. I gulped down my noodles and asked, Is something the matter, Elder? The old man hesitated for a moment before he said, Earlier, I saw a big piece of rat dung stuck in the noodles you picked up, but before I could warn you, you'd already swallowed it. At night, when I returned to my courtyard, that piece of rat dung stirred up a raging storm in my stomach, coursing through my limbs and bones. The scenario seemed all too familiar to me, just like how he had seemed familiar to me, how the word Hengwen seemed familiar to me. And so, stepping on auspicious clouds underfoot and with my essence, energy, and spirit merging as one, I ascended once more. Oh, goodness. I stood before the heavenly envoy receiving newly ascended, unranked immortals outside the southern heavenly gate. I have a feeling it wasn't rat dung. Maybe. That or he died. I'm not quite sure on that point, but if it was rat dung, ew. I stood before the heavenly envoy receiving newly ascended, unranked immortals outside the southern heavenly gate. The heavenly envoy did not think much of a newly ascended immortal like me, who became one through no work on my own, so he gave me the cold shoulder as he spread the register of names open, dipping his brush in ink, and asked me, What is your name in the mortal world? My name is Qingjun Mu in this life, I said. The heavenly envoy lifted his brush to record it down. Hold on for a moment. I will have to head over to Ling Xiao Palace to report to the Jade Emperor before you step through the southern heavenly gate. He closed the book and continued. You really have excellent luck. Tai Shang Lao Jun's elixirs were ready to be extracted from the furnace today, and the venerable elder Mahakasayapa from the Western Paradise just so happened to call on his residence for a visit. Lao Jun was discussing the Buddhist doctrines in terms of the Tao with him. In a moment of inattention while keeping away the elixirs, he dropped one into the mortal world. Who would have thought you'd be the one to pick it up? Having excellent luck is not something I can't help either, I said. In fact, this is not the first time. The heavenly envoy lifted his foot and turned around. Wait a minute, I called out. May I trouble you to pass a message to the Jade Emperor on my behalf? Just say that Song Yao has picked up yet another immortal elixir and has once again ascended to the heavenly court. The young heavenly envoy suddenly whipped around, his mouth half agape in astonishment, completely dumbfounded. Well, at least we now know he remembered. And this time, he has good luck with relationships. I stood at the base of the Jade Steps in Ling Xiao Palace. The Jade Emperor sat upright on his throne while the Queen Mother sat beside him. An aberration, the Jade Emperor exclaimed. Truly, an aberration. Why say it like that, the Queen Mother said. It hasn't been easy for Song Yao. He was nearly obliterated, yet he actually severed the immortal bond and has now returned to the heavenly court. If immortals have destinies too, then this is probably it. Since it's heaven's will, why put him in a spot? The Jade Emperor scrutinized my face and sighed after a moment. Forget it. Just as the Queen Mother has said, this is probably your fate. You were nearly obliterated, and now you have risen from the ashes to be reincarnated and reborn. We will not continue to pursue everything that is now in the past. But you can only be an immortal with no official post in the Heavenly Court, and the Heavenly Court will also treat you as non-existent. There is an island in the sea in the far east. Make your way there yourself to live out your days. Why is he getting punished for, accidentally eating another elixir? He didn't do it on purpose. Whatever. I bowed. Thank you, Jade Emperor. Then I exited Ling Xiao Palace. The young heavenly envoy who had led me into the hall was still outside the door, so I asked him, "Can I just ask where Hengwen Qingjun is now?" The young heavenly envoy raised his head woodenly. What Hengwen Qingjun? Hengwen Qingjun of Wei Yuan Palace, who is in charge of acclaimed literary figures, I said. The one in charge of acclaimed literary figures is Tianjun Lu Jing, the young heavenly envoy said. He lives in Wei Yuan Palace. There's no Hengwen Qingjun in the heavenly court. Icy snow crushed down on me. A voice beside me called out, "Song Yao! Song Yao!" I saw Baihua Lingjun the moment I turned my head. I instantly pounced over and grabbed his shoulders. "Where's Hengwen?" Baihua Lingjun looked at me with his eyebrows raised. You've got some nerve for asking that. The problem with Baihua Lingjun was that the more you were in a hurry, the slower he would be. The more anxious you got, the more back he was. He slowly led me to a secluded spot and slowly picked a rock to sit on. Only then did he slowly say, "That day you put on such a touching display of crawling to the mortal world to be obliterated, but the truth is that Hengwen knew of it as soon as you left the southern heavenly gate. When he rushed to the mortal world, you were already beyond saving, so he went ballistic and foolishly took out his own immortal essence to save you. He had never been immortal before, and without his immortal essence, he would have been instantly obliterated. Fortunately, the mortal world could not withstand his powers, and just as he was about to extract his essence, that mountaintop collapsed. Donghua and I hurried down and distributed a little of our respective immortal essence to you. Then we asked Lao Jun for an elixir pill and went to the Western Paradise to beseech Tathagata for some relics. It was with difficulty that we managed to preserve a small wisp of your soul. I asked Yan Wang for a favor and stuffed you into the cycle of reincarnation so that you may nurture and regenerate your soul whole through several lifetimes. Hengwen descended to the mortal world in secret to see you reincarnate. The Jade Emperor had him taken back to the heavenly court and put Lu Jing in charge of acclaimed literary figures. From then on, Hengwen Qingjun ceased to exist in the heavenly court. Where is Hengwen now? I asked. The scenery in the heavenly court was still the same, as if my several lifetimes of reincarnation in the mortal world had been but a fleeting dream. Prepared to head to the island in the sea to the far east, I stood from afar and gazed at my own Songyao Yuanjun residence and Hengwen's Wei Yuan palace of times begone. Just as I was turning to leave, a party of immortals walked over from the floating clouds. I retreated to stand by the side of the road. Surrounded by the rest of the Beidou Si Qing, an indifferent figure dressed in plain robe stopped when the party neared. Having freed himself of the past, Tian Shu was no longer as cutting cold. He looked at me and asked in a soft-spoken voice, Might you be the new immortal in the heavenly court? Yes, I answered. This humble one is Yun, Shin Ying Mu, who has just ascended to the heavenly court. Tianshu nodded and smiled, then proceeded in the other direction. I looked at his receding figure. The past of years bygone was much like the scent of the Lady Bank's roses in the first rays of yesteryear's morning sun, having faded away into the breeze and mist, leaving not a trace in its wake. With great haste, I hurried over to the far east. The islands and the sea were strewn all over with the skewed shapes of divine trees and boulders in disarray. I weaved my way back and forth among them. Where is Hengwen? I had asked. And Baihua Lingjun had said, the Jade Emperor has exiled him to the island of the far east. He stood under the heavenly tree outside the doors and smiled softly at me, like the brilliant bloom of 3,000 peach blossoms sweeping through the spring breeze. I owe you for all of 5 lifetimes and for restoring my soul, I said. Coupled with the interest, I might never be able to repay it, ever. You repaid my debt to Xuan Li on my behalf. You can offset it, Hengwen said. I doubt so, I said. You'll lose out on a lot if I do that. Hengwen waved his worn folding fan. I'm not really that bothered about it. So what if it's offset? So what if it isn't? I wrapped my arms around his shoulders. Precisely. You are mine, and I am yours. Between us, there is no such thing as a debt. The end. I mean, I am glad they're together. I'm a little curious about the fox. Like, there's still there's an extra. And then the afterword. But, like, what happened to the fox? Like, the whole destiny thing. Like, I'm glad that Tianshu is now, like, comfortable and just doing his own thing. Like, he seems so much more comfortable in his skin, which is amazing. I'm very happy for him. He's had a rough go of it. So I'm glad, like, he got his happy ending. But, like, what happened to the fox? Like, he went through all this stuff because he thought Hengwen was destined for this fox, and then... I mean, I guess it says something about free will, but, like, the whole thing has been, like, destiny, bonds, and everything. Maybe I'll figure it out with the extra, the living immortal, but I'm just like... This guy really likes just abruptly ending things. That is one of my criticisms is these endings are very abrupt. Anyway, extra, the living immortal. The living immortal was an ordinary charlatan. Charlatans were aplenty among all the fortune-tellers in the world, and the living immortal was just one of the extremely common ones of the lot. In the words of the living immortal, who once lamented to his fellow charlatans, no fortune-telling in this world is accurate. If fortunes can really be told and fates changed, I'd have long turned my luck around and become the damned prime minister. The living immortal had originally lived in a small city with an abundance of fish and rice. It was there in the city's Yu Lao temple that he had set up a stall all year round. When the unmarried young women and married old women came to the temple to pray, either for marriage for themselves or their children, they would often head to the stall to have their fortunes told. The city was small, so the whole city knew which household's miss took a shine to which household's young master, as well as whose daughter was of marriageable age. As such, the living immortal was right on the money every time he told a fortune, and that was how city folk came up with his nickname. They would often invite him for a drink whenever someone took a wife or married off their daughters. But then, on a certain day of a certain month in a certain year, another fortune teller came to the city. This fortune teller not only could match birthdays, interpret 8 characters, divine fortunes, and read fortune lots, but was even versed in bone physiognomy, and bone weight astrology, invoking deities and spirit writing, capturing demons and subduing evil, as well as restoring peace to a residence and turning its feng shui around. The living immortal did not have as many tricks up his sleeve as the newcomer did. It did not take long for him to lose the battle. His business dwindled by the day until it looked like he could not afford to even scrape a meager living. Thus, the living immortal decided to try his luck in the wider world. Not only could he receive more business, he could also train and develop his skills. The living immortal thus hoisted on his shoulder a banner with ironclad fortune-telling written on one side, carried his luggage on his back, and began his journey to the vast wide world yonder. On a glorious spring day, he arrived at the capital city. As expected, the capital was a gold mine. Having made his way to a Taoist temple, the living immortal rented a room in the side wing to set down his luggage. Then he walked into the yard to see the scenery, looking up just in time to see a man holding a child by the hand strolling in the yard. The living immortal glanced over and saw that the person was fair-faced, slightly bearded, and about 30 or so years old. At first glance, his clothes seemed simple and plain, but on closer inspection, they were of high-quality fabrics. The child still toddled a little on his feet, and his tiny attire and shoes were all exquisite. There was even a shiny golden longevity lock around his neck. Simply a fat sheep that has fallen out of the sky, an easy mark for the picking. Unhurriedly, the living immortal walked over, stroking his beard, and smiled. This little young master has such a distinctive, refined appearance. He's truly a blessed person. The rich man, holding the child's hand, looked up at the living immortal. Oh, how can you tell? You have an extraordinary bearing, and the little young master has a noble air to him, the living immortal replied. Those with the discerning eye can tell at a glance that both of you are distinguished people. If this humble one were to say that I have divined it, I'd be deceiving you. He cupped his hands, glanced down at the little one, furrowed his brows in a seemingly unwitting manner, then turned to walk away. With his hands behind his back, the living immortal pretended to look at the horizon as he strolled leisurely and counted inwardly to himself. 1, 2, 3. At the 6th step, he heard the man say from behind him, "Mister, please hold on." The living immortal turned around. Is there something I can help you with? You seemed a little worried when you looked at my son earlier, the man said. Might I ask why? The living immortal walked over slowly as he thought to himself, what shall this old one use to deceive him? A great calamity in life, a seemingly short life expectancy, versed to extreme sufferings. Calamity in life was often overused, and cursing someone with a short life seemed to be bad karma. The living immortal was a charlatan with a conscience. He walked over to the man and looked down at the child. May I presume to ask if the little young master was born in the Jizi year, the first year of the 60-year cycle? Peeking out from beneath the longevity lock hanging from the child's neck was a corner of an embroidered pouch, which seemed to be embroidered with a pattern of a mouse rolling money. So the living immortal had ventured a bold guess. The man was awestruck. That's right. My son was born on the first day of the 7th month in the Jizi year. The living immortal stroked his beard and divined with his fingers. The little young master was born to riches and honor, and his life is destined to be smooth sailing. In the future, he will get to enjoy a rare blessing that no other can enjoy. However, when it comes to marriage, I'm afraid. The living immortal mulled it over. He was not really adept at changing the diagram of one's fortune, warding off calamities, but his counterparts in the capital surely knew how, so he might as well pull out his proudest ability and haul in a big freaking profit. What about his marriage? The man prompted. The living immortal said, Earlier, when this humble one looked from afar, I saw little young master radiating with brilliant yang energy. Only those born on a yang day of a yang month and a yang year would have such an aura. Naturally, the man asked, What do you mean by on a yang day, on a yang month, and a yang year? The living immortal explained. The Jiazi year is made up of the first heavenly stem of Jia and the first earthly branch of Zi. It follows that the first heavenly stem of Jia is Yang, while the second heavenly stem of Yi is Ying, and so on. The earthly branch of Zi is of the same character as sun or male, and males are inherently yang, while females are inherently yin. What's more, the Jiazi year is the very first year of the heavenly stems and earthly branches' 60-year cycle. That makes it yang on top of yang. Months and days are sorted in accordance with the properties of yin and yang, with odd numbers being yang and even numbers being yin. So the first day of the 7th month in the first year of the cycle is doubly yang. To top it up, the marriages of those born in the 7th month at the peak of summer are mounted with obstacles to begin with. As the poem goes, the dog days of summer at its height is when the wild goose alone flies. So a person born on a yang day of a yang month in a yang year, the living immortal sighed and shook his head, is doomed to a fate of eternal solitude. Stunned, the man looked at the child he was holding. A fate of eternal solitude? How could that be? Mister, can it be salvaged? The living immortal had been waiting for this question. With a deep frown, he said, Alas, such a fate is typically beyond salvation. The living immortal dragged out the word beyond salvation, all but ready to add a however after it. But he was only just mid-drawl when the man staggered back a step. To think it can't be salvaged! With that, he turned his head to gaze at the sky and let loose a heavy-hearted sigh. The living immortal hurriedly strode a step forward. However, before he could finish, he stepped on empty air. As it turned out, the living immortal and the man had been standing by the side of a dry well. A certain royal consort was coming to the temple to perform a Taoist ritual, so the temple repaired the grounds, and the fabric they used to lift the soil had been left behind on the mouth of the well, all but forgotten. With soil covering the fabric, it looked no different from the usual ground, other than a slight bulge. The moment the living immortal stepped on it, he promptly plummeted down right to the bottom of the well. The back of his head struck against the wall, and before he could even yell in pain, he fainted. Once the man was done with his long sigh, he turned back, but it was empty all around, and the fortune-teller from earlier was nowhere to be found. From then on, a new legend that a great master had once appeared here began to make its rounds in the capital. Oh goodness, that's almost Looney Tune-esque right there. The living immortal broke an arm when he fell to the bottom of the well, and he had to recuperate for more than a month before he got better. His expenses in the capital were high, and his years of savings were almost depleted. The living immortal felt that this was just not his time in the capital. His signs possibly clashed with this place, and his fall was an omen that he would not only fail in his endeavor, but end up losing money instead. So the moment his arm recovered, he immediately departed the city and set off for the world at large to ply his trade. After more than a decade of wandering, the living immortal set foot once again in the capital. The living immortal was already in his 70s at this point, and he was no longer mobile enough to lead a wandering life. So he thought of finding a place where he could run a steady business and afford to be comfortable enough to live out his life in retirement. The living immortal was still fascinated by the capital. He found the bustle of the city lively, and there was plenty of business to be done. As they said, the greater hermit lives in reclusion in the city. The marketplace of the capital was the most thriving of all, which was the most suitable for the retired elder like him. After more than a decade, that Taoist temple was surprisingly still going strong. The temple master, also nearing 70 years of age, was very warm and cordial when he saw the living immortal. The living immortal bought 2 old houses in the alleys of the capital and went to this Taoist temple to set up his stall during the day. After the living immortal settled in, he first made inquiries about unusual happenings in the capital, as was his usual practice. There were countless uncommon happenings in the city, but of them, one stood out as the most uncommon. The eldest son of the current prime minister had a fate of eternal solitude. Legend had it that Prime Minister Song once met a great master who had told the eldest young master's fortune, and said that he, being born on a Yang day of a Yang month in a Yang year, was doomed to be single for life. The fortune told by the great master was right on the mark. The eldest young master from the Prime Minister's household was now the joke of the capital. Young Mrs. betrothed in marriage to him would definitely elope with someone else. The maidens he took a fancy to would surely get together with another. Of late, this young Master Song had his eyes on a lady from the brothel. Except for his own self, the whole city knew that said courtesan had a lover, a scholar living in a run-down temple. The living immortal received the news with a good amount of astonishment. Never had he expected the fate of eternal solitude to really exist in the world. If only the one I had met back then was this one. One certain day, the living immortal was sitting beside his stall in the temple when a dispirited young master walked in. The living immortal noted his weak gait, chest-fallen demeanor, dejected expression, and lifeless gaze. To his experienced eyes, it was clear at a glance that the youngster was heartbroken. The living immortal thought that since the phrase fate of eternal solitude had been used by a great master before and was validated by a person of eminence, he ought to use it often, so he called out, "Young master." Said young master pulled himself together a little and turned around. The living immortal stroked his snowy white beard and narrowed his eyes. "The young master, this old one sees a dark aura around your head, and your Hong Luong star, the star of marriage, is dim. Are you, by any chance, in distress because of love?" The young master tottered unsteadily to the front of the stall, sat down, and extended his palm without further ado. "Since you can tell, read my palm. I'm asking about my marriage. This old one is not versed in the art of palmistry," the living immortal said. "Would you take a reading with a character analysis?" "Oh, well," that young master said. "We'll do that then." He lifted a brush and wrote the character for pear. The living immortal half closed his eyes. Break up this character, and it comprises the radical again and again, one after another, in a recurring cycle, which implies that there's no escaping from it. Young master, you asked about your marriage, so forgive this old man for speaking bluntly, but I fear your fate is one of eternal solitude. The young man's eyes went blank as he sat in a daze. The living immortal was just about to say, however, when the young master suddenly barked out 2 bleak laughs and mumbled to himself. As expected. Just as expected. No matter when I have my fortune read, it's always this lousy fate. He let out another 2 more laughs and staggered right out of the door. The living immortal shouted after him, young master, you have not paid me yet." He chased him to the door, but the young master was long gone. Crippled beggar outside said with a laugh, "So I see you've also met young Master Song today. He's really pitiful. Because a great master has verified his fortune before, all the fortune tellers in the city will now come up with fate of eternal solitude whenever they read his fortune in marriage. Yeah, he's really unlucky." Only then did it dawn on the living immortal that the youngster earlier was the famous young Master Song. Well, never mind the money. That lad was indeed quite the pitiful sight. The second year, the living immortal heard that young Master Song had, for no apparent reason, vanished from home without a trace. This matter stirred up a huge commotion. Even the emperor issued an edict to search all over the world for him, but to no avail. Everyone guessed that young Master Song, being too heartbroken, had seen through the secular world and had gone to a small temple in an old virgin forest deep in the mountains to become a monk. On the contrary, the living immortal's business in the capital was smooth sailing. "So many people in the world love to have their fortunes told," the living immortal said to his apprentices. "We're not tricking them into spending this sum of money. Rather, they are the ones willing to spend." The living immortal's apprentices were all vagrant youths who had wandered the streets. Seeing that they did not have enough to eat, he would often share his food with them before eventually coming to accept them as apprentices. The living immortal said, "Just think of it as accumulating merit for the afterlife." Yeah, you're accumulating something. It might be called karma, but it's neither here nor there. The living immortal lived to be more than 90 years old before he passed away peacefully in his sleep. Sure enough, in accepting those few apprentices of his, he did indeed accumulate merit. 2 of the apprentices he had taken in were the only sons of prominent clans who had managed to escape when their families' properties were confiscated, their entire clan sentenced to death. 3 were the children of starving commoners who had fled to the capital after the Yellow River flooded its banks. Grateful to the living immortal, the parents of those apprentices in the underworld had put in a lot of good words for him before Yuanju. Yuanju summoned the living immortal to his palace hall and said he could arrange for him to be born into riches and honor in the next lifetime. As he still had some merits left, Yuanju also asked if he still had any other wishes. The living immortal said, "Yes. This old man has been called the living immortal for a lifetime, and yet I'm not blessed enough to ascend to immortality and see the heavenly court. So, I'd like a trip to the heavenly court." And Yuanju said, "That's easy." He arranged for Judge Lu to deliver an official correspondence to the Jade Emperor with a request for a heavenly envoy to bring the living immortal to the heavenly court for a tour. As the living immortal strolled around in the heavenly court, he still did not forget to ask about uncommon happenings in the area. The heavenly envoy guiding him answered, "If you look at it from a mortal's point of view, there are uncommon happenings everywhere in the heavenly court. If we were to talk about the most uncommon of them all," the heavenly envoy pointed with a finger, "Immortal Song Yao over there happened to pick up an immortal elixir and ascend. He's pretty much a rarity." The living immortal squinted his eyes and craned his neck to look in the finger's direction, only to see a young immortal in a long blue robe and an immortal in a long, light-colored gown sitting together under a heavenly tree. The immortal in blue sighed to the immortal in light colors. "Hengwen, I'm telling you, when I was in the mortal world, a great master once told my fortune and said that my fate was one of eternal solitude." That's funny. I mean, third time's the charm, right? All right. And here is the afterword. Hello, dear readers. Thank you very much for reading my humble work. Allow me to introduce myself briefly. I'm an author from China. Many people often ask me the same question when they first get to know me. Why did you choose such a pen name, The Gale Blows By? The reason might actually sound a bit whimsical. Years ago, I was reading a novel on a literary website and got so hooked that I suddenly had the urge to give writing a try as well. It just so happened to be windy and rainy when I registered my pen name, so I spontaneously came up with this name. I didn't expect it to become my official pseudonym that I kept using. Many authors put much thought into the selection of their pen names, and they would even consult experts to ensure that it'd be an auspicious name. In comparison, mine is admittedly more casually chosen. I used to submit short stories to magazines in the early days, but it wasn't until after I adopted the pen name Feng Gua Guo that I started serializing longer novels online. Then I had the fortune of seeing them published as physical books after the novels were completed. The genres of my humble works are quite diverse, and they include romance novels, adventure novels, detective novels, and so on. However, I mostly write stories set in ancient China or with immortality and fantasy elements. The physical North American releases that I've had the honor of seeing published this time, Peach Blossom Debt and The Imperial Uncle, both respectively an immortal fantasy novel and a novel set in fictional ancient China. It should be noted that most of the settings in my novels are made up. For example, the dynasty in The Imperial Uncle is entirely fictional and does not exist in history. Peach Blossom Debt, on the other hand, borrows from the setting of traditional Chinese immortals, but the main immortal protagonists of the story, as well as some settings of the heavenly court and the mortal realm, are my own creations. In fact, I was taking the lazy way out by doing this. Writing with a historical dynasty as a background would require me to do rigorous research. Attire, food, architecture, etiquette, and even the words and phrases used would have to be consistent with historical facts. Otherwise, I'd make a big fool of myself if there were any errors. It's a lot easier to make things up and borrow information from ancient times like I do. I'm very grateful to Peach Flower House for their willingness to translate and publish The Imperial Uncle and Peach Blossom Debt in English. This is also my first time having books published in English. I am very apprehensive about whether these two novels will be well received by North American readers. I mean, I think so. What do you think? I think it went well. My only criticism, I guess you could say, is they ended pretty abruptly. That's about it. My humble works are set in ancient China, so the characters' names may be confusing to North American readers. In ancient China, people had a courtesy name in addition to their given names. Men would get their courtesy names when they came of age at 20. In other words, they would hold a coming of age ceremony when they were 20 years old and obtained a courtesy name, which they would then use. The meanings of courtesy names were generally related to those of the given names, and I have retained this custom in my writings. For example, in The Imperial Uncle, Jing Wei Yi's courtesy name is Qingjun, Liu Tongyi's is Ranxi, and Yuanju's Sueya. Readers unfamiliar with this cultural background may find these names confusing and perplexing. In addition, the male protagonist in The Imperial Uncle would address others by their courtesy names in his interactions with them to show affection. For instance, calling Liu Tongyi Ranxi. In reality, courtesy names were a respectful form of address in ancient China. If the parties weren't on very familiar terms with one another, they wouldn't directly call each other by their full names, but rather by courtesy names. By all reason, saying Liu Tongyi or Tongyi would be more intimate than Ranxi. Yet, due to Jing Wei Yi's noble status, it's natural for him to call the other directly by their full names, while Ranxi, Sueya, conveys a sense of respect with a touch of affection. This might also be challenging for readers unfamiliar with the background of ancient China to grasp. On the other hand, in Peach Blossom Debt, most of the main characters are referred to by their given names, with rarely any mention of their courtesy names. However, as they are all immortals, they also have an additional immortal title. As such, I'm worried that my dear readers would find the multitude of names in my works too confusing to remember. Nonetheless, I personally think that my novels are lighthearted, and I don't give it too much thought when I didn't give it too much thought when I wrote them either. These humble works are ordinary light fiction meant to be relaxing, entertaining reads in your spare leisure time. What left a deep impression on me during my communication with the publication staff in this collaboration was their professionalism and meticulousness. Peach Blossom Debt and The Imperial Uncle were completed years ago, and I have a habit of revisiting my works periodically or before each publication of a book. I am now self-reflecting on whether this habit is necessarily correct. I myself thought that over time my writing would perhaps be a little more mature than it was before, that I might notice some oversights when rereading my past works. Many readers would also offer me suggestions, especially now that readers can communicate with authors online at any time. For example, a reader once told me after reading The Imperial Uncle that they felt Qingjun falls in love too easily, and they hoped I could make him a little more steadfast in his feelings. Or another reader would feel that Jing Wei was too mean towards Yuanju and hoped that the bond between them could be a little lighter, so that Yuanju could be a little freer. There was a period of time when I was more susceptible to influence, so I made numerous revisions to the works when presented with the opportunity to publish physical books. For this North American version, the staff communicated with me in all earnestness, even doing a word-for-word comparison of the various versions, upon which they expressed their opinion that the earliest version was the most suitable. I am touched by such thoroughness and meticulousness. To the North American book market, my humble works and I are new like a blank piece of paper, which subsequently means that sales would be hard to predict. Even so, the staff treated my works with such focus and conscientiousness. Their professionalism is truly admirable. Upon rereading, I realized that while the earliest versions had more writing flaws, the emotions conveyed were really more complete and robust. For that reason, the earliest versions of these two novels were used. There are many oversights and shortcomings in the context, and I appreciate the efforts of the translators and editors in translating and correcting them. The North American version of The Imperial Uncle not only has the earliest uncensored content, but also the complete collection of 4 extras, making it the most complete physical edition to date. Seems to align with the story. For Qingjun, the first is best. As for the Peach Blossom Debt, I'm sorry to say that there's only one very short extra titled The Living Immortal. There are no other special extras. After Peach Blossom Debt, I wrote another story set in the same universe, The Egg of Wishes. I personally considered this novel to be the extra for Peach Blossom Debt, so I didn't write any more. Over the years, I've written many other novels, and both my state of mind and writing style have changed. I'm worried that if I write another extra, it might not match the style of the original work. Besides, I do feel that this novel, while not long in length, is already very complete, and I think the existing contents are sufficient. Am I finding excuses for my laziness? I'll leave it to you, my dear readers, to decide. As we reach the end of this afterword, I would like to express my thanks to the editors, translators, designers, and publisher. Thank you for your love and support for my humble works. Of course, thank you, too, dear reader and listeners, for your willingness to read and buy this book. Here's to wishing you the best of luck and fortune. May your endeavors go as your heart desires. Da Feng Gua Guo. And that is the official end of Peach Blossom Debt. And my throat is killing me. What did you all think of it? I'm curious to hear what you thought of it. I think overall, I'm pretty satisfied. Like, it is, as they kind of mentioned, a more lighthearted read. There were some points where it was a little more serious, but I enjoyed it. I thought the reincarnation bit was pretty funny, especially the little asides from his perspective. That was pretty funny, especially the boar one, where he was like, "Excuse you, I will not be domesticated." And there's a cliff. Shoot. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Cookielicious. No, it was a pretty good book. I think it was kind of an interesting experience, at least for me, who is not, as I've stated before, a super big fan of that first person perspective. But it's well written. I will definitely say that. It kept me guessing at points, and that's partially the sign of a good book, is you can't predict everything in it, because that sometimes gets boring. So I appreciate that aspect of it. Yep, I right there with you, Cookielicious. I don't like first point of view too. Like it's a hard perspective to write in. You don't get to see other points of view. You don't get to hear what's going on, and I mean it takes a different skill set to write that. So I give mad props for that. I am super excited though to be moving on to our Fish Boys, because I love that series and I cannot wait. I will probably get the video for Tuesday set up, so it'll be there waiting for Tuesday, probably tonight. So I hope you all, whether you're here or listening later, I hope you will join us as we begin our deep dive into the disabled tyrant and his beloved pet fish. But thank you so much for joining, and I hope you had a great time listening. And thank you for reading. Have a great day ahead. Enjoy your weekend. Same to you, Cookielicious. I hope you have a fantastic day tomorrow, so Friday and your weekend, and I will see you hopefully on Tuesday. But goodbye, everybody. See you soon. I gotta lean forward so I can actually see over my book thing. Goodbye.